Have you ever found yourself wondering what are the differences between the green GT120 Matamp amplifier and the orange OR120 amplifier? If that is you, I think you're really going to want to stick around for this video because we're just going to sit down in the shop and basically talk about what makes these amps special, how they're similar to each other, and then kind of compare them electronically to some other well-known amplifiers. This isn't a sound demo, so if that is your thing, this is not going to be the video, but for the rest of us that want to know a little bit more about the behind the scenes, let's get to it. If you're new to the channel, my name's Jason Johnson and I run Fuzzlord Effects. We do gear demos, we do tech talks, and lastly, we do time-lapse builds on this channel that film the production here at Fuzzlord Effects. I run a small boutique shop and I get to build guitar effects and pedals and amps for musicians all over the world, and I'm extremely grateful to get to do so. I have a background in electrical engineering and of course guitar effects and circuit design, and the point of this channel is to take some time out of the day to sit down in the shop like you were here with me, and I want to try to translate some of what I know to benefit you as the viewer and as a guitar player, because sometimes I think the more you know about how things work, and I try to explain it in a way that anyone can understand, the more you know where to go to find the sound you want, and the quicker you can get there. I like using pedals, so maybe I'll go this way, or I really understand how this amp works now and I know that that's not the one for me. So that's what I hope to provide to you with my background, because I hope that you can benefit from it in a way that is entertaining to watch, yet you feel that you walk away informed and that you learn something. So if that sounds good to you, subscribe to the channel. That's it. I just really appreciate it. And be sure you comment below, because I love talking to each and every one of you and always want to know where you're from. It's something that just is very meaningful to me. Why are these amps so special? Maybe you've never heard of them. Maybe you just know that they're different colors. And I'd like to talk about that just a little bit. Both of these amplifiers came out in the mid-70s and were built by two different companies, even though they had a similar look and they worked in close proximity to each other. And I think they even swapped some parts sometimes. They were different companies run by different people, even though they were building such a similar product. Matt Mathias was working under the name Matamp and building the green amplifiers, and then of course there was Orange, which we all know of today, that was building like the OR120s. Keep in mind, these amplifiers were built basically before what we call doom music. Well, it had a title, right? So these amps weren't necessarily built in a way like this is for the electric wizard sound or whatever, or sleep, you know. They were big and loud, extremely powerful amps. Try to keep in mind that we were in a different era when these things were built. So guitar players like Peter Green, for example, wanted a really big, clean sound on stage so they could crank it up and be heard on stage and have everyone hear them. This is before PAs were like really like what we think of now. So it was a different deal. A lot of us are going to think the green GT120 and we're going to think of Matt Pike with his shirt off playing Dope Smoker and just this blown out crazy tone. Which if you crank every fucking knob on one, it'll sound pretty much like that, like almost to the T. But they're not the amps that a lot of us imagine. They're very much lower gain than we imagine sometimes. I haven't played a GT120 in person. I've heard the oranges like at concerts. Well, I've heard the old Matamps too at concerts, but not a green, I don't think. Anyway, that being said, we have this thing that we imagine out of them, I think a lot of us. And I built a clone of a GT120, just throw this out there, a little bit of my background in the subject. I built a clone of the GT120, and then I built a 50 watt tube amp, like and I wanted a scaled down version of the OR120 for like a smaller setup. The cool thing about the 50 watt amp is I built it as an OR120 to the T, like copied the preamp and stuff. I have the schematic right here and we're going to talk about it. And then I kept it for about a month, and then a month later I was looking at the GT120 schematic and I was like, wow, they're so similar, but it's like this and that. Like the order is swapped around with the main kind of like block diagram circuit design, which we'll talk about. So I rebuilt it into the GT120, plugged it back in, and they are totally different amps. They feel a lot different to me. One feels one way, and then one just feels a little more open and raw. I'm not going to say which my opinion was, but they behave differently, and I want to talk about why in a little bit. So that's why we're talking about them. They're these rare amps. There was not many of them made because they were built in the 70s in a small boutique shop, many times on custom order. So there's not many of them out there. They're rare. And then imagine the import process to the States. That's why we don't see many of them here, especially the farther west you go. I'm on the West Coast, and green and orange amps were just fucking rare. Now that's changing now, Reverb, eBay, and all this kind of stuff, but I know older amp techs and older builders, and I talk to them because they're like, man, West Coast, Northwest, anywhere you turn around you see a Sun amplifier. Sun was based out of right outside Portland, Oregon, 2 hours north of me. So that's why. This is like the geological aspect behind why where I'm at, these amps are extremely rare, and techs have just never even touched one or seen one until like Sleep and like Yob and stuff like that was like touring, and then had a output transformer blow, so they're in the shop trying to get a replacement, etc. So that's why we're talking about them. They're very rare, they're cool, there's not many of them made, and I'll tell you this, I think they are just one of the most well-built and best sounding amplifiers you could ever dream to own or play. Straight up. There's a lot of different good amps out there, and I will be the first to say that there's just differences between them all. It's like ice cream. I like vanilla one day and chocolate the next. Some people only like vanilla. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say anything's better or worse. Things are different than each other. There is such thing as well-made and crap. That's the only line I'll draw. They both made extremely high-end stuff, and it was handmade in the 70s. And that's just it. They're a little different. I will say that I think a lot of people associate the orange one with just a hair more gain, and people associate the green with a little cleaner and a little more punch, clarity. It's just bam, bam. Like, he said, sorry about punching in the face, bro. Boom, hit that chord. It's rad. True story. The last thing I'll leave you with on this section, keep it a short video, is that Matt Pike, what we imagine when we're thinking of all those old photos of him, he was playing like slave units. Those weren't actually GT120s, right? He was playing a bunch of 200 watt slave units, which is a power amp that he was driving with something else. So just to, I'm just trying to elaborate on the thought process behind what's similar and different between these amps, and like maybe the reasons why we have these like mythical stories about them. He was using some slave units that are like 200 watt like power amps, then chaining those together and then driving them with some different preamp or a different amp, like a GT120 maybe, or maybe it was an OR120. I believe he had a Sun, I heard, he had a Sun Model T style preamp for a little while. So, I mean, he changed his gear a lot, I guess is the main point. We're just used to seeing that color green, and that's why. And I'll leave you with a little thing that Matt Mathias, the guy behind the green amplifier, he built that amp with Peter Green in mind, because he was like his tech for a while. He was like traveling with the band and helping keep their gear running, Like, he obviously enjoyed it, right? I would love to go on tour like the band, hang out with them and stuff, but they also like met and they were talking about like, this is what I would want in the amp, and I think he tried to provide it. So it's no surprise that it's a little lower gain than we expect. It is a bit higher gain than what we're used to from amps of the era. If you put it next to a Marshall, like a Plexi will sound tighter and more refined and a little more metal to my ears. Or play some nice Jimi Hendrix where they just sound good. The oranges and the greens, they're a little looser, a little more fuzzy in nature versus like overdrive in sound. And oh my God, did they take pedals well. The greens and the oranges out of any amp I've ever touched or like built and messed with takes pedals so well. So if anything, that's why we see them in the Doom community so much, because we all like pedals and the stack gains and stuff. So you get a little gain in the amp, like AC/DC about, like Matt Pike talk about, a little bit of overdrive, and you kick on that fuzz for the fucking heavy stuff. Maybe kick on that second amp, bro. Sorry, punched you in the face with my amp, bro. Let's talk about what makes them different now. Okay, welcome to the final part of the video, and we got me a little OR120. Well, this is an OTR, slightly different. Schematic out, and I just want to talk about how you should view amplifiers a little bit. Well, you know, I don't want to say how you should do it, but it's just how I view it, and I want to share it with you. Let's talk about cars for a second. Without telling me much about a car, you could probably explain to me that it's got a V8 engine. It's a Chevy 350. It's a car, not a truck. It's two-door. Okay, I'm thinking of a sports car. I'm thinking about driving fast. This one's a V6, and you know, it's smaller and more compact. It's lightweight, but it still has a lot of acceleration. I'm thinking like Acura, right? You can think about amps like that in a way when you know about how they work a little bit. The greens and the oranges both have 2 preamp tubes, then 4 output tubes, power tubes. Power tubes, EL34, 4 of them are quad. Power tubes is what makes the power. This is what's giving us the 120 watts over here. Preamp over here is our little 12AX7s, which basically shapes the sound. We have a preamp with our little tone controls and gain knobs and shit like that, like a stereo, that's going to shape our tone in a way. Then we have this power amp, which is going to provide its own little tone too, so don't hate on me too much for that. But essentially its job is to take the sound that we crafted downstream and then amplify it, okay? Pump into that stack is what we're doing. So let's just talk about the simplest concept of how these 2 amplifiers are built and where they divert and where they get different. We're going to think of it like this. We have a guitar coming into our first gain stage. We're just going to think blocks, circuit blocks. First gain stage. Let's start with the green amp. Then we're going to follow that gain stage with our FAC style control, which they call depth or something, and the gain pot, and then another gain stage. When I say gain stage, I'm talking the actual stage of the tube, amplification stage. And then when I talk gain control, I'm talking about the knobs we have up front that interact with the circuit. So again, guitar comes in, we have a gain stage tube it goes into and it gets amplified. Then we come into that FAC style control and then gain pot. What that does is it either lets us overdrive the next gain stage, which happens next, or limit it. Overdrive it or limit it. Very simple, right? That's a gain knob on a pedal. The FAC is a frequency specific gain knob. I keep calling it FAC, bear with me. I think they call it a depth on a Matamp, but let's just talk circuits. That's going to insert different capacitors into your signal in series, which limits the signal in a frequency specific way. So as we turn that clicker one way or another, it like takes out bass, which reduces gain. And it also tightens up the low end. Sometimes when we're doing down tunings and everything else, you get too flubby and these amps are already loose sounding. So that's why that's there. Again, guitar, gain stage, FAC, variable kind of gain control, okay? Gain knob, and then another gain stage. Boost it up again. And then we hit our 2 knob tone control, bass, treble, James, tone stack. From there, we go into the phase inverter, which is a cathodiene, or split load phase inverter, as some people call it. And it's a very old style phase inverter. It's very clean, it's not as high a gain, it doesn't drive the power tubes as hard as like a long tail pair, for example, out of a Plexi or a JCM 800. And I think it really attributes to some of the sound, or contributes to the sound of the output section. It's this fine balance between driving more tubes at once than that phase inverter traditionally has in previous amplifiers that have been designed, like Fenders. And that provides this warm clarity, I feel. Then Soldano started modding a bunch of the phase inverters out of the factory to help clean up the overdrive so people could hit the front end harder. So that's the green, okay? Just think guitar, gain stage, gain controls with the FAC, gain stage, and then the tone stack. Limit the gain first and get overdrive, tone stack after, okay? And then into the phase inverter, which is a special one that differs from the Marshalls, like the Plexis, etc. So that'll be one thing that differs from the Marshall. Marshall amps of the time had three, like Plexis and stuff, JCMs, they had 3 preamp tubes, because it's a different setup with a different phase inverter. The oranges and the greens are very bare bones, and it's what makes them so wonderful with the pedals. Orange now, OR120, orange. Guitar, gain stage. Looking at schematic at my feet. Now instead of hitting that gain control like we did in the green, we're gonna take the same sort of tone stack pretty much and put that now. And after the tone stack, right there, gain control. And then the next gain stage. Does that make sense? We're EQing first now, and then our gain control's right there. After that, we hit the FAC control after that next gain stage. So it's basically like your guitar comes in, and then we have our tone shaping real early with our gain. It's just different. And then we boost it again, just like we did in the other amp. And then now we're going to stick the FAC control there. So to me, that's like limiting the gain between stage 1 and 2 with the gain control, and then also using the tone stack to help shape that, and then sticking the FAC between stage 2 and the phase inverter. It's just different. Can you appreciate that? I hope you can appreciate that, and maybe say something in the comments. One of them, we're going to control the gain earlier and then EQ later more drastically, and then into a the phase inverter, and then into the power amp, etc. The other one, we're going to do the EQ really early and the gain control. Can you imagine that because of that, where the EQ is, the signal wouldn't be as overdriven right there? So in the green one, we're EQing after there's a bit of overdrive. And then in the orange one, we're kind of EQing before the overdrive happens. I think that's interesting. They're very simpler. They're very simple amplifiers, and they're very similar to each other. They utilize very well thought out circuit design to use really good and efficient stuff. The Jamestown Stack is just a wonderful answer to the Fender bass middle treble. It was designed at Harvard by an engineer with the last name James, who wanted to provide a 2-band stereo type tone control that would do everything the 3-knob would, but with 2. Engineers, right? They're always trying to make things better and cooler. And then also, something very special to both of these amplifiers is the depth, or the FAC control, which like limits certain frequencies, the low end, out cleaning up the sound, making it more open. Now you start pairing this with your fuzz pedals and everything else, and man, do you have control over your sound, because in between each little stage, you are controlling how you're gain stacking your tone. And then the combination of the phase inverter with the big power amp section provides a really clean and powerful sound. So there we have it. I hope that this video was informative to you and also entertaining, and that even though we didn't talk any numbers or circuits or really even look at the schematic that I was looking at my feet, I just wanted to walk you through what it would look like. I know if we started looking at the schematic, it would be really intimidating to a lot of people. And if you already read schematic, you probably already have it pulled up in another tab and you're reading along with me and you're seeing it. Maybe you should pull it up now after you've watched, and then go back and look at it while we talk about it. So I hope that walking through just the bare bones of how the preamp and the power amp function, we didn't go into the power supply and all these other things. It's like saying a car has gas and a gas tank and wheels. They all do, okay? So let's not get caught in the details, and let's just sit down and try to focus on what made the green GT120 and the orange OR120 such legendary amplifiers. And I hope now that possibly you have just a little bit more insight on that. Again, folks, my name is Jason Johnson. I run Fuzzlord Effects. And if you want to check out more of the channel, please check out some more videos. Hit subscribe, because I put out one video a week, not always on the same day, because I am busy running the shop and producing pedals for people all over the world that I'm very thankful to work for. So be sure you check out more of the videos, subscribe, check out fuzzlordeffects.com, and if you haven't yet, please follow me on Instagram, because I post daily and it's a great way to engage with me. I like talking to everyone there. If you haven't, be sure you check out the demo for the Trog that happened recently on my friend Steve's channel, Does It Doom. It's a featured channel on my page. He did a really cool sound demo last week on one of the Fuzzlord pedals. And coming up soon, I'm going to be doing a video all about the Range Master, and he sent me some OC44 transistors, the really cool Mojo ones. So we're going to talk about the pedal, we're going to talk about the circuit and what makes it special, kind of like this, and then we're going to mix it all into this time-lapse thing. It might be a two-part video, I don't know, but I think it's going to be really interesting to a lot of folks. Like this, only with maybe a little sound demo at the end, and then some time-lapse footage of the work behind it. Thank you all for watching.